Hi everyone, I'm Matt Ashley. I'm a water resource specialist with Aurora Water. I manage our watershed health program, and a lot of people ask, what is a watershed? A watershed is basically the land that the water runs over on its way down to the river, on its way down to our reservoirs, and eventually to us. So we're up here today in our watershed in the upper South Platte. We are in the North Fork of the South Platte, just outside of Bailey, Colorado today. And this is a really important area to our watershed because it's just above our Strontia Springs Reservoir. So when we're talking about watershed protection, one of the number one things we worry about in Colorado is wildfire. So a big tool we have at our disposal is to take care of the forest and thin out the forest and make it healthier so that the water runs across a healthy forest on its way to us. So we're going to talk about a few things today, learning more about watersheds and the type of work we do. Under our source water protection program, we invest in about 20 projects per year across our entire watershed, and we usually cover about 250 to 300 acres of forestry projects. We also invest in projects like sediment reduction, as well as riparian and wetland restoration as well. Okay, so the problem with fire in our watershed is that after a fire, there's a lot of erosion that happens. You can picture the pictures you've seen on the news of a mudslide happening after a wildfire. We have the same thing happening here, except for here it's more of a sedimentation, sandy gravel that flushes down the side streams and into our reservoirs. This causes a lot of problems with our water collection infrastructure, and it reduces our storage capacity. So we're very worried about forest fire and preventing that to prevent those negative effects. A lot of people think fire is a big problem, but fire is actually a natural part of the landscape. So when we're managing fire in forests, we're really trying to work with nature to make the fire help us to our advantage. And that's why we have areas like this where we thin out the forest to reduce fuels. So fire is a natural part of the landscape, but an interesting thing has happened over the last 100 or so years. Humans have suppressed fires, and what we have is a buildup of too much fuel. As you can see here up on the hillside behind me, those trees are much more tightly packed and much more dense. It's a lot of fuel, and those conditions can lead to megafires, which burn much hotter and affect the soil so that things won't grow back after those fires. This area around me here has been cleaned out by one of our forestry partners and thinned out. They've basically just reduced the number of trees to reduce that fuel, which prevents fire risk to begin with, as well as if a fire does move through this area, it burns much less hot and we don't get as much destruction as those megafire and overfueled conditions. So the process for doing a forestry project like this involves first the forester comes in and much like a doctor, the forester diagnoses the forest and comes up with a prescription, and they basically lay out which trees are going to be cut down and which trees are going to be kept. They like to keep an even distribution of species, different types of species of trees and different ages of trees, different groups and clumping of trees. Then after that, it goes through a permitting process if that's needed with the U.S. Forest Service or local agencies. Then after that, you bring in whether it's equipment or whether it's people doing it with hand power and chainsaws. In this case, this was a mechanical thinning project. They had all kinds of different feller bunchers and different equipment in here cutting down these trees. Then when the project is over, this project used mastication, which is just basically a big giant mulching lawnmower type machine that comes in and um, crunches up all those branches that were left over from the trees, and that's kind of this wood chip material you see on the ground. That also helps with recovery, and new plants can grow in those little areas left behind from there. Some years later, the Forest Service may come through here and use prescribed burning to further manage these fuels. That's a tool in the toolbox to accomplish this work also, but it's not used every time. Aurora's watershed covers almost a quarter of the entire state of Colorado. So our watershed health program focuses our work on the upper watersheds. We're in the upper South Platte watershed today at our Miller Gulch project, and we obviously can't cover all of that ground ourselves when managing the watershed. So our watershed work is heavily reliant on partnerships and collaboration. So this project here was done in collaboration with our nonprofit partner, Stewardship West, Denver Water, the U.S. Forest Service, as well as local county and municipal agencies. So when you're looking at a project like this, it involves a lot of coordination and planning between closing roads and getting equipment in here, as well as managing recreation, mountain biking and hiking, things like that. So collaboration is really critical. We collaborate with not only those nonprofit partners, we collaborate with local fire districts, we collaborate with other water providers, as well as state agencies. So a question we get a lot with projects like this is, how long does it take for the trees to grow back, and how often do you have to come back and cut those trees down again? A good rule of thumb is 20 to 30 years, but it can also depend on the type of trees and the amount of moisture the area gets. We can also be helped out in that effort with a natural fire occurring to get rid of some of that fuel, or also prescribed burns can help us out with that too. So what we're seeing on the hillside up there is a burn scar from a wildfire about 20 years ago. And as we pan across to the right here, you can see a little bit more of this close-in burn scar. And then as we get farther away across the valley, you can see a really big burn scar. That also is about 20 years old. And the problem with these fires is there's too much fuel in the forest, so the fire burns really hot, and that's why we call it a megafire, because it's abnormal, unnatural fire behavior. And the reason that megafires are bad is because they burn so hot that it makes it almost impossible for vegetation to regrow after that fire. And that's why you see that huge blank space over there even after 20 years. And that just leads to all the problems of erosion and really messing up our water supply. So we really want to prevent megafires from happening, and that's why we do forestry management. With our watershed being so big, we can't do work all across the entire watershed. So we have to prioritize our resources and analyze the areas that are going to be the most impactful to do work in. We do that with our source water protection plan. It has a lot of mapping and analysis that helps us decide the areas where we're going to work and make our investments the most impactful.